Welcome to The Good Pod, where today we're going to be talking about Elsbeth, Season 1, Episode 10, aka the finale. We have made it. I am here, one of your hosts, Jason Reed. And as always, I'm with my co-host, Marissa Garza. Marissa,
Yeah,
how's it going?
it's going good. We got here. We made it 10 whole episodes of Elsbeth. Elsbeth made it. Like, she did a great job. We did it all together.
Mhm.
I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah, I think this 10 episodes sampling. I don't know if we get a well we know we're getting a season 2. I don't know if we're going to get more than 10 episodes of season 2, but I felt like from episode 1 to episode 10, I think the show has really kind of found its groove, especially since the show really kind of went away from their normal convention
Yeah.
that the show has been going on. How did you feel about how the show kind of changed it up this last episode?
Well, I loved the open because usually we see all of the things, and this time we didn't see all of the things. And I liked how it corresponded with like Elspeth's mood, basically, and her mental state. And I thought that was really interesting. I also liked how we dropped the consent decree of it all. And I think it's just going to leave some more, like, kind of open it up for this universe to have its own identity and be able to, like, stand on its own 2 feet next season. So I'm kind of interested, especially as we'll talk about, like how it ended and where everybody is at the end of this episode. I think we have ourselves it could be a very long running CBS procedural at the end of the day.
Yeah, I really liked how we kind of tied up everything in a nice little bow. We got a lot of closure. We got a lot of view of things to come. I think it's interesting if you think about the fact that at the time Ellsworth wrapped up this first season, they didn't know if they're going to get a season 2. So I thought this was a very interesting ending with some things that we definitely saw coming that we talked about. Some things that I specifically guessed that didn't come to fruition, which I still think in a season 2 I still think we're going to get it. They left, and for those that don't know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
I'm
tell
talking
the
about
people.
freaking Claudia Wagner definitely has her hands in some bad stuff going on, and I just think in season 2 we're going to get that. I think they maybe were spreading the crumbs for it, and because they didn't know if they're getting a season 2, they're like, maybe we'll pay this off in season 2. I don't know, because she is so shady. I can just see it in her. So I'm waiting for that to happen. But yeah, I felt like everything else was really tied up in a neat little bow and left our characters. If we didn't get a season 2, I think this way we would have known, all right, Ellsworth has found her place in New York. She's
Yeah.
going to be working with NYPD, and whatever other good wife spinoff comes afterwards could reference her being in New York, being a successful NYPD consultant or something.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job giving themselves options at the end of this episode. It could have been the end, it could be the start of something else. It could, and yes, there is the open door of the Claudia of it all, but I feel like you're right. I think it will show up as the show continues.
Yeah, I was before we get into too much of this,
Yeah.
let's remind the people, about the things we got going on.
What do we got
Uh,
going
we
on?
we have a brand new development for this podcast, right? We're a fledgling podcast, finding our feet, finding our podcasty legs, and just like any good podcast out there, we had to have a YouTube channel,
Yes.
and we had to show our beautiful faces on the YouTube to let you guys see what we're working with, see our expressions, our emotions as we're talking about this episode. So you can go find our YouTube channel. It is The Good Pod, obviously, on YouTube. So The Good Pod TV, sorry, on YouTube. That's where you can find us. As you can see us talking about the show. We'll have this episode out on video. The last 4 other episodes we've done will be audio only, but you can see us from here on out talking about.
Plan.
Was that?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. You can see us talking here on out about this end episode of Elsbeth, and of course, as we told you last episode, we will be starting our Good Wife rewatch next week, and so you can see us talking about the beginnings of everything good.
Yes.
Everything good, good wife, good fight, all that good stuff. So we have that here for you. If you're listening and you want to scramble over to YouTube and check us out, please do that. Also, we as a startup podcast, we're looking for your help in getting us out there. And a way to do that is to give us reviews and ratings on whatever podcast app you're using. On Spotify, you can rate us with stars. On Apple, you can also rate with stars and also leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. And we have a couple more written reviews that we got this past week. So I'm gonna shout these people out. The first one is from KLPNY, titled Fun Listen. The podcast goes, I enjoyed watching quirky Elsbeth on The Good Wife years ago and decided to give the new series a chance, even though I rarely watch scripted TV. Then I realized Jason Reed was doing a podcast. I have loved listening to Jason on his RHAP podcast. In parentheses, the only reason I watch Married at First Sight is because of Asia and Jason's podcast. Listening to Jason and Marissa talk about Elsbeth enhances the experience. I hope everyone returns for another season. Wow, I'm glad that the crossover appeal is working, folks. I'm really down for it. And we have a similar theme going on in our other review that we got this week. It is from Memed55, titled Excited to Hear More. This one is haven't seen a single episode of Elsbeth, but as a fan of Jason and The Good Wife, I wanted to support. Have enjoyed every episode of your pod and can't wait to follow along with your rewatch of The Good Wife. Memed55, thank you so much. I love the fact that they haven't even watched a single episode of Elsbeth, but is following along with the podcast, which from my experience with the Married at First Sight podcast, a lot of people do that there as well. So we really appreciate you supporting us. I mean, watch the show. I think part of the fun of the show is watching, just like you might watch us on YouTube, the fun is watching Elsbeth be all quirky and weird with all their tote bags. So
we bring some quirks with us to this podcast.
Sure.
For sure. But Jason, I mean, don't sell yourself short here. You are the star of the show in these reviews. I think the appeal is you and your ability to podcast without having, a big reference to the show. So that's, I think your brand is listen to me podcast. You don't even have to watch TV. So run with it.
Listen, I'm proud of it. I'm proud that people are coming to check me out because of the other work I did. And, you get a bonus with Marissa Garza, who everyone will find is so fun, funny, and detailed. Listen, if you saw the notes of this podcast, you would know how detailed and ingrained Marissa is, how knowledgeable and smart she is. So for those that came for me, you get an extra fun bonus with Marissa here. So with that being said, Elsbeth finale.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. All right. This was titled A Fitting Finale. It is the Festival of Fashion in New York City. I'm guessing that's also known as Fashion Week, but we couldn't really say that.
The off-brand Fashion Week. We're not able to get permission to say Fashion Week, so we'll do it with this.
I did enjoy the alliteration of Festival of Fashion, but a festival, it just didn't have the same vibe.
I'm surprised to start calling it like FOF.
Yeah.
Welcome to FOF, Festival of Fashion.
After seeing a man walk in with an envelope titled Pangaea Project, we were introduced to fashion designer Mateo Hart by the one and only Tim Gunn. It was nice to see Tim Gunn out there.
Now, I haven't, I'm not a big Project Runway fan. That is the show, right?
Yes, that is the show. I mean,
okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah,
not a fan. Not a big fan. Listen, for those that are watching the YouTube, you can see my glowing billboard behind me. I had never watched an episode of Project Runway, but I know the Make It Work saying. So I decided to use that for a little bit of my background here. But I at least know who Tim Gunn is. I can see that man and say that's Tim Gunn. So I was like, oh, that's fun. That's interesting. I think the show heard me last week say, not a lot of big name guest stars. Like, oh yeah, we'll give you Tim Gunn and Laura Benanti. How about that? I was like, okay.
Well, and Andre DeShields, who plays Mateo, is a Tony Award-winning actor, and he also was in the original Broadway cast of The Wiz, so he's been around for a while, and I highly recommend listening to his Tony acceptance speech. It's very good and very touching if you're looking for things to Google. But he is a legend in his own right.
Someone as uncultured as me did not know who this man was. I was like, I feel like this person is probably famous.
But yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not in that world. So I was just like, I feel like I should be more impressed that they have this man on the show than I am. He's a fabulous actor and fantastic.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I should know who this is, but I just don't.
Well, it's okay. That's why we're doing this together. So they're attending Nick Clay's show about climate change. You know, fashion always has to make a statement. And it just also happens to be Nick's soon to be ex wife Nadine's last walk on the runway. They put so much into this show.
Yeah.
And Nadine is played, as you mentioned, by Laura Benetti, who we know from The Gilded
From our
Age.
show, The Gilded Age, Susan Blaine, the Mrs. Robinson of The
Yeah.
Gilded Age, who played a very kind of saucy role, as saucy as you kind of get on The Gilded Age.
Yes.
So she was very fun there, and of course, so many other wonderful things she's been in.
And she brought the sass and the style and the accent to this role as well.
A lot of people were saying that because she's done comedy bits on, I think it's a Colbert show portraying Melania Trump.
Yes.
So a lot of people said it reminded them of that with the accent. So that was very very fun and funny.
She is also a Tony Award winner. So yeah, they really just like called up the Tonys and were like, "Hey, do you have some
I
people
mean,
who
it kind of
can?"
fits with your Broadway theme
Hmm.
that you've been pointing out on all these episodes that have some kind of aspect of Broadway. So I think the Kings are huge fans of Broadway apparently because they've really kind of utilized all that in all these episodes so far in this season.
Yeah, I don't think they have to ask very hard to get people to show up. So then we see this like lady come in. I think she was supposed to be like the Anna Wintour of our universe. She's got sunglasses on. She's a fashion editor. Everyone's like happy to see her, but not really happy to see her. We see Ezra try to take pictures. He is a mean photographer, Jason. Like, did you see how he was just like, get out of my way? He had a mission and he was like, not going to let anyone stop him.
He's like jostling for a position with all the other photographers are like pushing each other out of the way. I was like, I thought this guy was going to be like our hero, our
Yeah.
victim that we're going to be like upset is dead. Like by the end, I'm not really that upset that Ezra's dead.
Yeah, it didn't really we already had the one journalist that was killed with the dog in the dog episode. So, but this one they were just like, yes, he dies. And he does die like with a bullet from a silent gun. This is of course given to us as the audience with the precursor of Nadine and Nick are missing. So trying to get us to think that Nadine and Nick are behind this. But as we soon find out, or later find out, that is not the case. Kaya is doing her best friend a solid and inviting Elsbeth to the crime scene, even though she is no longer officially in her consent decree role or doing anything like that. I love these two characters together, and I love the support that they give each other, and that she knew that as Elsbeth would be, an asset here, but also it would bring her some joy to see the festival of fashion.
Yeah, I love the chemistry that is really built up between Kaya and Elsbeth, and I love how they look out for each other. I love that Kaya's like and she's going to stand up to Wagner later and just be like, "Listen, she's doing great work. She's a fantastic investigator. Why wouldn't I bring her in this? Like at this point, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you don't bring Elsbeth in here." So I love that. I love the rapport and the relationship that they've built up in this season.
Yes. We learned through the investigation that Ezra was a gambler or he was in some debts. He definitely had money problems and had people looking for him because they were owed money by him. Detective Donnelly is back on the case. Love to see her. I really have enjoyed seeing Detective Donnelly over the season and this episode particular. She just was like very accepting of like the world as it is. Just like, yeah, okay, Elsbeth, you do your thing. I'm going to do my thing. And they supported each other as well. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, she's really thought out since the first episode. Where much like our other detectives, they have we're not having any of Elsbeth's nonsense. But by this one, I mean, we even get an admission that she's going to miss Elsbeth when she thinks she's
Yeah.
going away. And Donnelly, I think, was the only other detective that was at Elsbeth's housewarming
Yep.
party, right? Because I mean, I think of our rotating detectives, Donnelly has definitely warmed up to Elsbeth the most.
Yeah. And she shows up to the fashion show later. Like she's
Yep.
there. She's part of the club. We learned that Mateo was the teacher of Nick and Nadine and Ezra. Like all of these people went to the Fashion University of New York, also known as FUNY.
Funny.
Yeah. So that is the connection there. And Nick and Nadine are definitely fighting in front of people and, showing people that they are going to be divorced. But in true Elsbeth fashion, Elsbeth is like, these people are not. not in love, because the opposite of love is indifference, which is a quote from Ellie Weitzel, who's a Holocaust survivor, which I thought was a nice little drop in there. He also won the Nobel Peace Prize. So Elspeth's coming in with some big quote guns here and noting that they still might be in love because they are definitely not indifferent against each other.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. What did you think overall of the fashions in the fashion show?
Yeah. So I am not a, like I do watch Project Runway, but I would never wear those things. Like,
I almost
I
thought it
don't
looked
know how
like
you
something.
sit down. It looks like you take a pinwheel, like you it like a craft in like third grade or something, but fancier.
I almost thought it was something that should have been in a season of Stranger Things, like that. It almost they almost looked
Oh,
like some big like Demogorgon monsters or something that like it was so weird and creepy. They were like it was all wavy and it was all blood
it
red. I thought it was
didn't
very weird.
it didn't speak melting glacier to you, Jason?
No, I did not get that impression whatsoever when I saw that. And Elsbeth with her entrances are so interesting as we saw Elsbeth kind of duck in through like supermodels and just
Yes.
the height of the supermodels compared to Elsbeth was so funny. It was such a fun juxtaposition. It was a very fun Elsbeth entrance as
Yeah,
she likes to do.
agreed. But during this whole time, like everyone's expecting Elspeth, even me as an audience member was expecting Elspeth to have a hunch, and she had no hunch. So we knew something was up. What did you
Yeah,
think
there's
of
no
doing this to her?
there was no aha moment. There was no like, there was no automatic eyeing of the suspect that we usually get, which he usually solves within 2 seconds of being on the scene. I think it was refreshing for this show. I'll say that. And I hope, in seasons to come, they just pepper in some more episodes like this
Yeah.
where she doesn't know for whatever reason. I was almost thinking, like, as we're going through the episode, I was almost thinking, like, what if the killer is someone that we didn't meet there and Elsbeth didn't get a chance to meet or see? And that's why she is having hunch problems. But apparently, it's because she's so emotional from being let go by Wagner earlier. But
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting that she had no hunch, no idea. And like I said, I think I enjoyed the episode more because there was a mystery component to who killed Ezra.
Yeah. I think what was interesting too is that she did solve it right away because she said, oh, the camera was pointed in the wrong direction. Like she knew at the beginning because Ezra was from where Ezra died, the angle was not right to be seen for him to see who shot him basically.
Right.
So she knew like different pieces and she picks up other pieces throughout her investigation that end up being correct, and that just shows just like how strong her intuition is, and she's able to like pick out certain pieces. But we as the audience have seen all of that before, and it did make it a lot more interesting that we didn't know this time, and we were kind of experiencing it along with Elsbeth, and also feeling the tension of her not being as so sure of herself and not knowing what to do with that.
Yes, I mean, at this point, what were your thoughts on who killed Ezra, who it could be? What were you thinking about the perpetrators?
I honestly thought it was Nick because he was
Mhm.
missing so much. I did not think Nadine was taking such a like protective route with the other model of like, hey, don't go by Nick. Nick's bad news, blah, blah, blah. And was so into herself, she had to get in the moment. Like she was doing deep breathing before walking the runway, getting into character of the melting glacier. So I think she was a little too preoccupied to do anything. I did not
Yeah,
think that Mateo was involved. So if anything, I thought it was Sunglasses Lady who had hired someone or was connected to.
that's interesting because, like, I was, the show, I was trying to like work through, I was trying to outthink the show, right? Because I was like,
Yeah.
what does the show, what is the show saying about Nick and Nadine? What do they want me to think? And I know that's probably not what it's gonna be. So what could it be? Because by the end of the whole fashion show's like setting we were in, Nick comes up to Nadine and is like, well, I guess our problem solved. So I think the show at that point is like, maybe they did it together. So I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, maybe it's neither Nick or Nadine. That's definitely a theory. I thought maybe Nick and Nadine were in on it with Mateo at some point, and then I started getting onto the Mateo track. I also was onto the what was her name? Hassel. Gisela track, which is the Anna Wintour
Oh
look-alike.
yeah, yeah.
I was also on that track. I was like, maybe it's just someone that we just don't think of at all because they weren't interviewed there. So my head was going in many different directions at many different times. And it wasn't until a moment later that I was like, okay, I think I got it now.
Yeah, and it was just it was more fun. It was and I
Sure.
think like in the episodes before where we saw everything about the primary storyline, the primary murder, like my mind was going that way about Wagner's case of like, oh, this is but there what they didn't give us as much as they give us on the murder case on Wagner's case. So it would be just like 2 minutes of like, oh, I wonder what this is. And
Yeah.
then this really kept me more engaged throughout the whole episode. So I hope it's something we see going forward. And it's like a game to play with Elsbeth. Like, can we
I
get there
mean,
before her?
right, from all of the, reactions I've seen online, it seems like it's overwhelmingly the same feeling we're having. Like we love the fact that it's a mystery now. Like we would love to see more of this. Hopefully the writers and everything take that into more account. I'm sure that, a lot of Elsbeth season 2 is already written, but you can really kind of move stuff around to make it different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope the writers and the people in charge take note of how we're feeling about this type of case. I think they've kind of dug themselves into a hole with the fact that it's so on all the characters' minds that Elsbeth is always solving things quickly. And I do like how meta they're kind of being in this episode, where they're pointing out the fact, well, I mean, Elsbeth, you look at a scene and you can tell what it is, so let us know, lady. So I do like how meta they're pointing at themselves and being in this way.
Love a self aware person, show, anything. It's
Yes,
good. Well, speaking of The Office, I don't know if we were talking about The Office, but at The Office, things are awkward. Kaya, though, is like showing how she learned from Elspeth by using note cards and like putting things out on the case. It was so, so
so cute.
cute.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Meanwhile, Wagner's still got a stick up his butt and is like not joking around about Elsbeth not being there. This is the first time we see Kaya like stand up for Elsbeth and say like she's good at what she does. And Elsbeth we see, and I think this is like the first true emotion we've seen from this character throughout all three series that this character has been in. But she is really, really sad. I enjoyed seeing that emotion from her because we had not gotten that depth of character from her up until this point. What did you think?
Yeah, I actually earlier today read a interview with TV Line that Carrie Preston did about
Oh,
the finale,
yeah.
and they asked her about that. They said, we've never really seen this type of emotion from Elsbeth in any of her appearances. She said, that's the great thing about having this standalone show with Elsbeth. She has more room to
Yeah.
emote now because on the Good Wife and Good Fight, she was more of a gimmick character, right? She would come in, do her silly, fun things, and leave out, and she wasn't able to show much emotion. I do love the fact that we're seeing more of how she's feeling and how that's affecting her, how that affects her process, right? Because
Yeah.
we learn more about her as a character because she can't work right if she's sad. She's like a malfunctioning robot. Like if there's an error in her coding, she can't work, and that error is emotion and regret and hurt by the fact that Wagner's kind of dismissing her. I wish we could have gotten a little bit more into that about like, Wagner, why are you being so like mean? Like, why are you being so cruel to me? I wish we could have gotten more into her emotion like that. But I did enjoy the fact that she acknowledges that she's so sad about being dismissed, and she thinks that's why she cannot do her usual hunch gathering, if you will.
Yeah. And I think we will discover it'll be interesting as we go through our rewatch of The Good Wife and The Good Fight to see if we get any inklings. I mean, I think this is the first time that Elspeth's really been part of a team. So being like kicked off of a team has got to be like a major core wound for her of like, I've not wanted anymore. She was like feeling so excited and things like that. So I'm excited to see as we go back to kind of see if we get any instincts in that because I just remember her being like working in a closet again or like, being dismissed by other characters on the show. And this was like the first time she had a group of people that, yeah, she had to work to get their respect and work to get her credibility across, but she got there. And then
Yeah.
just as she got there, the door closes. So
I
yeah.
think it is interesting with Wagner, where I think even Wagner is conflicted with himself. He's mad, but then he tells her, don't leave without saying
Yeah.
goodbye. Like, well, screw you, buddy. You're kicking me out of here.
That is what we call mixed messages. And if you get them, do not participate. Nadine comes
Wait,
to
whoever's
visit.
giving you those messages.
Nadine comes to visit. She has things to say. She just like walks in. I have things to say. She talks about how she's going to start a makeup and office supply line, which I just thought was hilarious because it's always like people who are so detached from everyday society think that they can solve a problem that nobody has this problem. No one is thinking, you know what?
Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And she tries to get the police to start looking at Ezra's debts and the people who are looking at him for money. And then she's like, bye, I'll be out of town for a couple of days. I did love
I
her
wish,
also, like, I'm a giver.
yeah, of
I'm giving
course.
this to you.
I wish they leaned a little more into exactly what does makeup. What was it? Something Earth sustainability makeup and office supplies. I think she said a makeup remover and staple remover at the same time. I wish it would lean a little more into that. Give us some more examples. Maybe a prototype. Like, what does that even look like? What does a makeup remover slash staple remover look like? I had to rewind. Like, did she say staple remover? It's like, what does that look like? I would love to see a prototype, maybe a commercial or something. It's a line of her products. I think that
You
would be. I think.
know, they did put that
I,
billboard up
yeah,
from the other show. So maybe we'll see an Easter egg or two next season.
that would be so hilarious if a character walks into a room and we just see like a Laura Benanti commercial on a TV
Yeah.
advertising her products. That would be. I'm glad that Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the show yet, as some of our listeners don't apparently. Laura Benanti's not the killer, so it would be really fun to have her pop back up in future seasons of the show.
Yeah, especially because her and Elsbeth have that little moment on the bench at the end of the episode where they're
Yeah,
just like, maybe it's another friend for Elsbeth and she'll show up at a party or
yeah.
something.
Too bad Elsbeth already had her housewarming party.
Yeah, I know. So, with this information that Nadine gives the police, they head out to the pawn shop where apparently Ezra was always in and out of, like either selling something or buying something that he buying back his camera, things like that. I did love the pawn shop owner. I recognized him from Orange is the New Black. I cannot remember
Hmm.
how my brain got there, but I verified it on IMDb that he was.
It's like a
Um,
guard or something.
mhm,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And I loved how he knew about Pangaea.
Yeah, it's like, well, he gives the historical context. Like, well, that's not what we're talking about here exactly. He's like, oh, well, in that case, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. We also learn while they're there that someone named Bobby Domingo is missing. Bobby Domingo was looking for Ezra, looking for money. And I just love how every single time like a new piece of information comes, Donnelly's like, it was to send a message. Like,
Yeah,
because the
Bobby Domingo.
question was, like, how was Bobby's gun at the crime scene if Bobby
Mhm.
is missing? It's like, oh, just send a message.
It's like, why? I love how Ellsworth checks. He's like, why would Bobby Domingo kill someone that owed him money? Because he's not going to get his money if he kills the person that owes it. So why would that make sense? And I was like, I don't know. Like, and I do love the name Bobby Domingo. Just sounds
It's a
like
good one.
a character that is like a loan shark-ish character or an enforcer character. Hey, Bobby Domingo, he's a gangster. This just sounds like that character. Sounds like a name you would give to that character.
Yeah, it was good. We also learned that Nadine went to go pick up Ezra's things at the from the coroner. So this gets Donnelly to say, "Okay, let us handle the stuff with the actual evidence. You go ahead and cozy up to the suspect, Elsbeth. And that's how we'll handle
See,
this case." It was great delegation on her part.
see, Donnelly, we can all work together. We can all get along if you just let me do my thing and you do your thing, and we all know how this works now. I will say it is weird to be like, "Hey, Elsbeth, you regular citizen with
Yes,
no
yes.
police training, just go hang out with a suspected murderer. Like, just go
Well,
on your own."
and at this
She's
point,
been doing
she
it all
has.
season. Yeah, she's doing it all season, but it's weird to have a police officer just to have her go do that.
Well, and she has no authority here. Well,
None.
any time, but even less so than in previous episodes because the whole decree thing is done. She doesn't even have her law license in New York, so she's like She is
Well,
literally
I don't
just a
know if she's
citizen at this point.
I don't know if she's officially fired yet. I think she's like in transition to getting fired because when she gets to the scene, Donnie's like, she's a consent decree person. I'm not even
Yeah,
going to get into it. She's like, I'm just not even going to get into the whole thing. Like, I love how at this point it's just how the journey of the consent decree has gone. And now it's just like, it's a thing. Don't worry about it. She's just here to investigate. That she's an they just start like introducing her as an investigator at this point. I
yes,
think maybe next season we'll get there at that point. She's a consultant. She's an
that would be.
investigator, whatever you want to call it.
So Elspeth picks up and goes to find Nadine, who's been hiding out at Mateo's house in Connecticut. Nadine is discovering cookies. I thought this was hilarious. She was like, I just learned how delicious cookies are, and they're like the cheapest cookie. Like they're not even like a homemade cookie. It's
They're
just
probably like the cookie. They're probably the cookie thins. They're like the
yes,
100-calorie cookies. It's
yes,
like I'm discovering cookies. I think it would be hilarious and just off the wall if they did introduce her next season. If they maybe give her like one of those prosthetic suits and she's like a little bigger. Just like I just gotta. I was discovering. She's like she has pizza in her hand at all times. She's like I've just been discovering food. I'm just enjoying it.
yeah. It was pretty funny, and this is also when like I think we're trying to be led to think that Nadine did it because Nadine's like first question was like, "What's going on with the investigation? What's going on?" And meanwhile, Mateo's like just dancing around his studio, and then also making Elsbeth his muse for his show that had is coming up in the future and needs a whole new like redesign thing. So I thought they did a good job kind of getting us off the scent at that point because Nadine
Yeah.
was really like, "What's going on?"
I like Mateo as a character. He's a really fun guy, and I love how he vibes with not only Elsbeth but with Nadine. I think I think their relationship felt like like it was a real thing. Like they've been friends for a long time. They even had like a little bit of time before Ellsworth got there to
Mm,
Mateo's home where they're kind of shooting ideas off one another. I was like, see, this is what happens when you got two really great actors in the same scene. Like it just the relationship feels warm.
yes, agreed. What did you think of Nadine teaching Elspeth how to do the walk on the runway?
Very fun, of course. I mean, just like a low rated part of Elsbeth's game is her physical comedy,
Yeah.
her physicality. I'll say, like just like in the Keenan Michael Key episode where he did the fun dancing with her. I think it's very fun when she's able to kind of be a little more wacky like that and do the fun dancing, the fun walking. Very fun, and of course, Laura Benanti just chews up the scenery in that in that scene and does this the clomping walk where he's like
Yes.
clop 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 like that. That was very fun. Yeah,
It was so good. And her outfit like was so over the top. Like this is just practice for
yeah.
runway. And she's like wearing this flowing, big shouldered outfit. I thought it was so fun. And during that conversation, Elspeth, of course, is, like asking questions. So she's still got some of her game going. She's not, like giving up, but her compass is a little off. And she's asking, why did you go pick up the stuff from the corner, Nadine? And Nadine tries to sell Elsbeth on the story of, oh, Ezra had like nude photos of me. And Elsbeth's like, yeah, I've seen almost nude photos of you. I don't understand why this would be a big problem.
I didn't really understand Elsbeth's line of thinking here. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, you almost saw all of me, but you haven't seen all of me. I still don't really want that stuff out there. I thought it
Yeah.
was a plausible excuse. I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds right to me.
Yeah. I was like, I kind of hear what you're saying in terms of like, aren't you comfortable in that position? But they're still not her. They weren't photos that she decided to be public. They weren't
Yeah, like
like, and it's her body. And so
right.
I don't know. It was
You
weird.
see most of my bits, but not all of them. I want to keep a little bit of mystique.
Yeah.
Like even if it's a tiny bit of mystique, like I want to keep it. Like yeah, you see most of me, not all of me. I thought it was a really weird thing for Ellsworth to say. I was like, that is some odd reasoning for you to take Ellsworth. Maybe that's part of her mojo being off.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. And then again, Nadine's like, hey, I think Nick killed Ezra. She was really like trying to solve
Throwing out
along the
theories.
time.
She's definitely throwing out theories. I mean, I think any other episode of Elsbeth, we would be like, she's definitely like that would be something that one of our murderers would do, like
Yes.
to come and like throw out other theories to set someone off on another suspect. But in this instance, I guess Nadine, because I mean we do find out Nadine and Ezra had quite a hot and heavy thing a while ago, so she is emotional about Ezra being dead. So I guess she's a kind of forthright in trying to find Ezra's killer here.
Yeah. Elsbeth brings Gonzo. Gonzo's back.
Gonzo's here. I don't know. Maybe episodes like 8 and 9 were flip flopped or something, and they just they mentioned Gonzo in 9, but he's definitely here in 10. So I definitely appreciate some Gonzo love in these episodes.
Yes, and Gonzo will play a pivotal role in just a moment, but Elsbeth is being fitted for her fashion show, and Mateo is kind of giving away a lot of information here. He's showing her like he has these rings on. These rings are very noticeable, and then he says if someone notices something, I tell everyone if somebody notices something about you, use it to your advantage basically. And so that's going to be something that like sticks in Elsbeth's mind. This is
When
not
we
something that's going
saw
to go away.
when we saw Mateo in those rings, I was like,
Hmm.
interesting.
Not shying away from being a director, asking direct questions, just straight up asks Ezra or asks Mateo about Project Pangaea or the Pangaea project. And this is the worst project I have ever heard of
Oh,
in my
buddy.
whole life.
This was tough. This was very interesting. This is an interesting thing to even just kind of broach in even in a fictional
Yeah.
universe. It's like, wow, you're really going on the line here.
I mean, yeah, I do applaud the show for going there, and I applaud the show for using the words. The show used these words: black face, yellow face, red face. Like those are things that we don't talk about in everyday society anymore, like at all. We shouldn't really, but like people don't. That's like a no. And the fact that they were said on television and also then seen as something that could like ruin Nadine's brand of makeup and office supplies and like
Yeah.
getting her off track for her new life was interesting. I appreciate when the show does bring those things up and in the way that they do it, but I was like, please don't show I'm glad they did not show the photos. I'm
Well,
glad
yeah.
they just like let us know that they
It's
were not
bad.
good.
Yeah, that would have been definitely a step way too far. I think it's also interesting that they used that particular thing of blackface because I mean they're talking about when they were in college, so this had to have been in like 80s, 90s, where maybe even early 2000s, I don't know, where it was still bad. Let's make that clear.
It's always
But
been
it
bad.
was
It's always
yeah,
bad.
always been bad, but it wasn't as recognized in culture as that. Celebrities still make that faux pas today,
Yeah.
but I think it was interesting that this was done in the 90s or whenever, and they still knew at that point. It's like, oh, this ain't good. Like Mateo put the squash on that. Apparently, it would have been so interesting as Mateo being a black man to see those
Yeah.
photos. Like, what the hell is this? And the fact that he's still good friends with Nadine to this day is very interesting and very it's a good mindset to have. Like, I know you effed up, but I'm gonna just take them to kind of you're an idiot and leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like Nadine was like, oh, yeah, that was a mistake. Go ahead and get rid of the photos. But it was Ezra who was like, these are my work. This is my art. I have to hold on to this. And that I think keep your enemies close type of thing was what kept Nadine and Ezra together for a little bit. Like, as long as you have these pictures of me, I'm going to know
Yeah.
where you are.
Get you some work. Want to make sure you got plenty of money coming in so that you don't release those photos.
Yeah. Did you buy the story that Gonzo had found little Sebastian, Mateo's dog, in the backyard when Elsbeth is out about to leave?
Yeah, that was a little. I mean, I don't think they would have put that in there if it was actually Sebastian. So definitely that makes my antenna ping. I was like,
Yeah.
something's weird there because I don't think they would really put that in the show if it didn't mean anything. And they muddled that storyline a little bit because they were, like we later learned that Sebastian passed away in the pandemic, so it was 4 years ago. I was like, I don't know, Gonzo may still be able to pick up a scent from 4 years ago. I don't know, so it was a little muddled in the way they were telling it.
It's Gonzo the Wonder Dog.
I wonder if next season Gonzo's gonna have like gone through some formal police training because he seems to sniff out some stuff there because he sniffed out the headband from Quinn's headband a couple episodes ago. He's sniffing something
Yeah,
right with this patch of grass. Maybe Elsbeth should get him some good training so that she can bring him on all of the cases.
I'm here for it. Well, since Nadine has said that Nick killed Ezra, Nick is brought in for questioning, and I loved this whole like, "You're my divorce lawyer, not my murder lawyer." Do I need a
Do I
murder
need a murder?
lawyer?
Am I gonna need a murder lawyer? Like I don't know, maybe. It's like, I thought it was so fun and so funny. Like they didn't do a whole lot with Nick
No.
after the fashion show, which is fine. I think Laura Benanti was more than able to pick up, the whole storyline. But I think that was very fun. We didn't really even take this that seriously. It was more of like a back. It's like, oh, she's gonna accuse me of murder. Well, I accuse her of
Yeah,
murder.
yeah. Like that's how they are not indifferent. Like they are
Mhm.
still very much this for that type of relationship. And this is where he's like, "Hey, she's been moving money around. Like this is not, this is why we're in the situation that we're in." And so they go back and try to have a conversation. Wagner and the detectives and Elspeth go into an office to try and like suss out what's going on. And there's like the police are all over the place. They have like so many different motives. They can go in so many different directions. And they all look at Elsbeth and they say, "What do you think?" And she's like, "I got nothing. And I think it's because I'm upset." And again, we see like this pure, true emotion. And I really loved how she stuck up for herself and also said, "I put aside seats for you at this fashion show. If you want to go, it'll be a fitting ending to my time here." Like she's trying to make the most of it. And I especially loved Kaya's response to when Elsbeth left because she says to Wagner, who's like still leaning in to Elsbeth at this point and saying, "Maybe it's because you didn't find what you were supposed to find," or something like that. And Kaya's like, "What was she supposed to do? Like, she was here on assignment. What was she supposed to do?"
Like she's lucky. Like Wagner is lucky that Elsbeth didn't just go with the obvious evidence, which is
Yes.
what all of Wagner's detectives would have done, because all of Wagner's detectives are ready to take the first piece of evidence they got and turn people in. He's lucky that Elsbeth felt in her gut that there was something else going on here and didn't turn Wagner in immediately. So I don't know. Kaya is exactly right. What did you expect her to do in this situation? She was sent here to investigate you directly. She didn't turn you in the first time she could get. She let you figure it out and let you, you know, run the case and do what you did, which is got the real criminal. So what did you want her to do? Like just come here and be like, Wagner seems like a good guy. I just won't do my job. Like, come on, Wagner. Let me be
Yeah.
real, be cool. Which I guess we don't see much from here to fashion show from Wagner, but I guess what Kaya said really sunk into him.
Yeah. It's time for the fashion show. And I loved the fashion show so much. They really captured Elspeth's style. They even had bags. Like it was so great. And I love that they picked up on this aspect of Elspeth's character and really kind of highlighted it to the kind of theme of the show. If somebody notices something about you, like use it to your advantage. But Elspeth is like still off her game. She sees Nadine behind stage and she just like basically confronts her with everything that she knows and she starts crying and she thinks she's worried that she lost her mojo.
Poor Elsbeth.
I know.
I did like the directness because I mean Elspeth is not one for being direct, really, because she's
Yeah.
all about trying to catch criminals in the act. And I think she's so frustrated that her mojo isn't working that she's willing to just put it all on the table and be like, what's up here? What's going on? You're shady. Like, tell me why you're shady. Because even though Elspeth is having trouble with this case, I still think she's using her Elspeth senses to see. I don't think you're a bad guy, but you seem like a bad guy. So what's the deal?
It's kind of like what she was experiencing with Wagner. Like,
Yeah.
everything's telling me that you're a bad person, but I think you're a good person. I did love the music selection of Make Your Own Kind of Music for the Runway song. It was so good. And I loved who showed up. So we talked a little bit about this before. Kaya and Donnelly are there, and then we see Wagner walk in. And we also see like Elspeth's entire body change when she sees Wagner. Like Wagner's thoughts and perception of Elspeth is really important to Elsbeth. So it was great that he came and showed up and smiled. And this also just like magically turned the Elsbeth button back on. And she was able to, walk down the runway and come back in and say, "Oh, I solved it. I know how to do this."
Yeah, that was a little too like fantastical for me. I was like, I don't usually like those type of moments in TV shows where it's like, and this made her magically get fixed. But I did enjoy this the whole sentimentality of it with Wagner coming in with his police uniform on. It almost
Yeah.
made me feel like a officer and a gentleman.
Oh,
I've never
real
seen that
Richard
movie.
Gere action happening?
I've never seen that movie, but I do know that I guess it's at the end. Maybe I don't know when he comes in his whole uniform and picks her up and takes whisks her off. It made me kind of feel like that. It's just like he walks in with his uniform and she's so happy to see him and just like you said lights up and then does her thing on the runway. It was very very fun and very cute.
She
I did
was
love that
like serving some looks at the end of that runway.
moment. Mhm.
She was really working it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed the fashion show. And then, like we said, this is what turns on the light bulb. So Elspeth goes to Mateo's with everyone. Everyone's there, so we know. Okay, we know as the audience she has figured this out. And I loved the setup of we used photos from Ezra's very high definition
yeah.
camera.
Let's be clear. We can only see this because it's a high resolution. That's the only reason this worked. Let's make it clear for the audience who, if we didn't say that, their first thing would be like, well, how do they see that from that camera? How were they able to zoom in and make it
Yeah,
look so good at that point? So they were made sure to put in for us. It's a very high resolution camera. That's why we can see it.
yeah. Elsbeth remembered that Mateo had mentioned that he had helped with the sounds and the lights. So this was a very distracting drama type of show during the first fashion show that we saw. So that had always stuck in her mind. And when she was in the fashion show for herself, she saw Sunglasses Lady, the Anna Wintour of it all, and saw how reflective those glasses were. And so she said, okay, I bet you there's a photo on Ezra's camera that we could look at to see if he could see who shot him. And lo and behold, there's a hand coming out of a curtain with those MH rings on, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no one else this could be other than Mateo.
I didn't go check, but I did not remember seeing those rings when we saw the hand at first.
No, they were there. They were there
They
because
were.
like in the very first time we see Mateo, like his hand, like we see his hand before we see anything else, and there's an H ring on his finger. And I thought it was just like a clue of like, oh, Hadestown, like, oh, H, because that was the play that he won his Tony for. So I was like, oh, they're really being like, again, me going way too far
The
into
Broadway
where it
route.
is. Yeah. And then later when he was talking about his rings, I saw an M. And so I was like,
But did we see them on
oh,
the hand of the person shooting the gun, or did we only
yeah.
see the gun?
No, we saw
We
him
did.
on the hand. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow!
In that high definition, high resolution photo, we
Oh.
did see them there. It
No,
wasn't just
I meant in the show. In the show, when we saw Ezra get shot in the first like 5 minutes of
not
the
the
show,
first
we
time.
see,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
'Cause I don't remember if we saw the hand or if we just saw the gun
We
poking
just
out of the.
saw the like barrel of the gun, like the
Okay,
silencer.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, it was like as soon as I saw Mateo in those rings, they focused on the rings. I was like, okay, definitely something about those rings. That's when I was leading more toward Mateo. I was like, okay, Mateo has definitely moved up my suspect list. So yeah, that was very very interesting. And Mateo though, because I was watching after the show, after the first fashion show, and Mateo was right there next to Nadine, so he was there for the walkouts. I guess he was able to hustle himself
Yeah.
from that curtain to the audience there. So yeah, the Mateo reveal was very fun and interesting about how the story goes of how he got into the situation.
Well, yeah, because then he just basically confesses to another murder in this situation and explaining how like Ezra was staying with him and he was giving him money so he could get back on his feet. And then one day he comes home and Bobby Domingo's there, and it's never good when Bobby Domingo's there.
Freaking Bobby Domingo.
So Mateo, in self-defense of some sort, or not self-defense but defense, basically killed this man and buried him in the backyard, and that's what Gonzo had found. And he couldn't go to the police and he couldn't do anything because he was so worried about his legacy, Jason. Like, normal people are always thinking about
Yeah,
their
because
legacy.
you came in and found a weird man in your house, and quote unquote defended yourself. I don't. It was for me. It was just a little like, I don't know if I really love that reasoning for the character to do that.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a little neat of a way to tie up all of the loose ends of the story, because that's how we get Bobby's gun at the crime scene, because Bobby was in the house, and that's it. Yeah.
Very weird for me. I was like, oh, okay, I understand, but it was a really kind of circuitous way to get to everything.
Well, they have like more story to wrap up in the only time that they have for the show. So after that's done, Solitanos made it to New York City, Jason. Can you believe
Yeah,
it?
he and Wagner get to meet up in the flesh. I was like, oh, here's Celentano. There you go.
And I love how Wagner's like, "Are you going to apologize? Is that a thing you're going to do?" And Solitano's like, "The Department of Justice does not issue apologies.
We
We
have
write
reports.
reports."
Yeah, and that report says that Charles Wallace Wagner was found to be not have done this. So I was like, that was a fun little interchange they had. Were you surprised that we didn't get any of like Noonan really kind of
Yeah.
like, explaining himself, or we get a interview with Noonan or something?
Yeah, he's just kind of in jail.
Yeah,
Like they took care of him pretty quick. But
it's like he did
especially
it. That's
given
it.
the personal history between Wagner and Noonan, I would have expected to see like maybe a jail visit call type thing. Like, what do you want me to
Mhm.
do with this from your office or something, like, or
Yeah.
give me some more information. But maybe we'll leave that door open for the continuing case of the foundation, and maybe Claudia will go visit Noonan in jail.
Yes. Let's
Whoa.
go. I cannot believe they didn't reveal Claudia was part of this in this season finale. I could have sworn that we would have gotten that. But like I said, we always have season two. I fully believe. I think what it will be, right? Noonan in jail calls
Mm-hmm.
Wagner. He's like, I got some information. Like, you better beware. Because if you don't help me, I don't know, get out of jail early or something, I'm going to reveal some information about Claudia, and that sets Wagner off on a mission to figure out what's going on. Skip something because Claudia is not innocent. Like I
No,
just,
I think she's gonna go. She's gonna visit Noonan, try to get information that Noonan has that she needs, so that she can continue the corruptness, and
mm,
then Elsbeth's gonna like figure out something, and that's like, because right now Wagner and Elsbeth are like back together, and so we need something to sort of. And could you imagine if Elsbeth went up to Wagner and said, "Hey, your wife is in trouble"? Like, he's gonna
yeah,
either, depending on it could go one of two ways. There's only two ways. It'll be like, "Oh, really? Let me help you," or "Get out of here. My wife is perfect. She's,
yes,
if there's something that she's done wrong, I would know about it." So I think if anything, Wagner's not talking to Noonan for a while, unless he needs
I can see
to.
that.
But
I can definitely see that.
I would love to see Claudia take more action, because then we could see her be more of the like corrupt mastermind that we think she is. Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
great if she's not in it at all and we're just writing this entire story by ourselves?
she's got to be like all my instincts. Like I'm like Elsbeth. I see Claudia on the screen. The way she's acting, the way she's talking, her innocent talk and act. Like Claudia's definitely crooked. Claudia's definitely in on this thing.
Yeah.
She's got to be. I will if they switch it up. I'll have to like talk to the Kings. Like, listen, Kings, tell me what is the plan to have Claudia in on this thing? They'll be like, yeah, but we ditched it. Like I knew it. Claudia's got to be in on it.
Before Elspeth leaves New York, she meets up with Nadine in the park, and there's this. I thought this was a cool little scene because, one, Nadine tells Elsbeth, "I was lying to you, but not every lie is about murder," which was a great line, which was
Yeah,
funny.
that was very interesting. That was very funny, a funny way to put that, and very true. I mean, listen, the world's not centered around Elsbeth in this murder case. There's other things going on in my life that I had to lie about.
Yeah. And then we have this like little accountability moment of sorts, where Elspeth was like, "Hey, I did look at those photos and they were pretty bad." And Nadine, in a Gwyneth Paltrow like way, was like, "I stand for taking responsibility. I will do the work."
It definitely felt like a notes app apology
Yes,
in,
it
in,
did.
in real
It was
time.
like a celebrity, like if it was, yeah, it would be posted on Instagram from your
Yeah,
notes
like,
app.
I got caught doing something bad, and here's
Yeah.
my spiel about how I'm gonna do better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be more accountable. Blah 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 blah. It won't
Would
mean
you
a
like a
single
chip?
word of it. Yeah, she's yeah, eating potato chips, just discovering the joys of junk food. I love that for her. I love that for that character for Nadine.
If Nadine does come back, it would be interesting if she has done the work in quotation marks and
Mhm.
like her new brand is like being some sort of advocate or activist, but not really, like she thinks she's helping, but she's not really helping. You know what I mean? Like, or like she does her office makeup, office supplies makeup thing, and then it's like, and 10% of our proceeds go to build schools and something
I think
along those lines.
I think in the future I see I would like to see there be a case next season that takes place in the office of a take on Goop from
Oh
Gwyneth Paltrow.
yeah.
And someone in the office has been murdered, and Laura Benanti is the head of the office, and she's involved in some way. She's probably not the killer again, but she's someone in the office is the killer. I would like to see that. I would also love to see, like I mentioned, like maybe she has like prosthetics for the next time we see her. Her body's growing a little bit. I think what would be even funnier is if we didn't do that and she just ate copious amounts of junk food and never gained any weight. like
That's
it's like
probably what it was.
yeah, I eat it all. I just don't gain a pound. Like that would be the better way to go in that. And the funnier way to go.
Well, I hope we're right about her because we were wrong about the ball girl, and we thought that the ball girl would be a reoccurring character. Remember?
We should still bring her back. We should still
Yeah,
bring. We should bring. There's a lot of recurring people we should bring back.
yeah, that'll be good. Well, we're almost to our goodbye, but before we get to our goodbye, let's talk about Elsbeth's goodbye. The goodbye between her and Kaya was so sweet. I loved how Kaya was thanking Elsbeth for everything, and then I also loved, in true, this is like the most Elsbeth thing she could say. She's like, a bunch of people died, but we sure had a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of murders, but we had a great time, didn't we? It's like way to kind of bring the whole thing full circle and just kind of actually say what it is. Like, yeah, we met during some circumstances that were bad for other people, but we got to meet, which is great. So thank goodness those people died.
Silver lining.
Yes.
And Wagner comes up and he's like, okay, it's time to go. Like, let's take officers come in and take Elspeth's things away. Where do they take him, Jason?
Right into Noonan's old office. That was so sweet. I was like, oh, that was so heartwarming. I almost thought they were going to like Wagner's office and like Ellsworth would be working like right next to Wagner. I almost thought that's what it was, but now we find out it's Noonan's office. Whoever got promoted when Noonan got, arrested must be so pissed. Like, that's supposed to be my office. Like, just giving it to the wacky investigator lady. Like, what's up with that? I still got to stay out here in my little cubicle. I can't get my office because you gave it to the crazy lady. Damn.
Yeah, yeah. And they set it up really great because Elspeth says, what am I going to do with all this space? And Kaya's like, I'll be here. And we learn that Wagner is going to fast track Kaya to become a detective. So hopefully by
Uh,
next season, that will have already happened. And we'll have our little Cagney and Lacey team on the case of Kaya and Elspeth. And watch out, New York. They're coming for
yeah.
you.
It was only right. It's only right to make Kaya a detective because there has been a good progression with Kaya as a character who, when we first met her, she was just a, regular beat cop stuck babysitting Elsbeth. Then she really gets into the groove of it. And then we'd see her making deductions, making observations. And she says how much she's learned from Elsbeth. So I think that this is a very good journey for Kaya, a very good progression of her character. And I do hope that by the start of next season, we've had a little bit of a time jump and Kaya is now a detective. That would be so much fun.
Yes.
That would be the right thing to do for that character.
Yes. I also enjoyed the final shot of the show in the season where Elspeth's walking, admiring the skyline of New York, and then there's people dressed in Elspeth outfits. And so it's
So,
like, you really do belong here. It was so cute.
I almost expected her to take her hat off and throw it up in the air like Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
I
gonna make it after all. Like I almost expected that moment, but I love her with Gonzo looking out on over the skyline of New York. I think that was very fun, reminiscent of the opening credits of Elsbeth, where you see the kind of the skyline. I thought it was a very nice shot to end on, like you said.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the whole season.
That's it. We made it to the end. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. A couple of the early episodes, I was like, a little bumpy, a little. I think by the end here, we've really found a really good groove for this show.
Yeah, and I think it sets us up for a great rewatch because we've been
Mhm.
reacquainted with Elspeth, and now we can kind of watch with that lens as we're going through the rest of the episodes, and hopefully, prepare for the next Elspeth season and continue the story. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed our time with Elsbeth, and seeing that character grow even more than she had when we seen her on her wacky times on her other shows. So I really had a great time watching the show, talking about the show with you.
Yeah.
So it's really been a fun journey you've had these 10 episodes.
Agreed. Well, Jason, do you want to tell the people what's up next?
So up next week we start our the Good Wife rewatch. We'll be doing an episode a week, so hopefully we won't miss a week, but you can take the journey along with us. And actually, we do have a way that you can let us know what your favorite moments are that you're looking forward to. We do have an email address, thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com. So we would love to hear from you. Love for you to tell us what you're looking forward to on this Good Wife rewatch, moments, episodes, characters. We would still love to hear what you thought about the Elsbeth coverage. So if you have anything to tell us, you can just leave it there and we will read it on the pod, and we will answer whatever questions you guys have. So that's the way that you can get in touch with us and let us know what you're thinking about and how you feel about everything.
Yes, we would love to hear from you and get your takes on things because it's always more fun when we're in the conversation together.
Love the engagement.
Yes. Other than that, Jason, what are you up to? What's going on?
You can always find me on the Twitter at JAYR1085. My Twitter's gone a little crazy at the moment
Oh,
because
interesting.
because for those that know me and know my podcast life, my other podcast that I'm typically on, which is called A Perfect Match, covering the show Married at First Sight, which the show itself is on hiatus, but my co-host of that show, Asia Wealth, aka Asia Welch, aka Asia Wealth, we just all just
Yeah.
found out. We all just found out that she is going to be on the next season of Survivor. So once that got out, everything's been going kind of crazy. But on the podcast tip, like I said, Perfect Match is on hiatus at the moment. But we do have some coverage coming up for the show Perfect Match, which is another of those Netflix type of love shows. So I'm going to be talking about that show coming up with Kirsten McInnes. That comes
Nice.
out June 7th. So check me out there if you're into those kind of shows. That's where I'll be coming up. Right now, I did guest star on the 90 Day Fiance wrap up this past week, talking about that show. So if that's your bag, also check me out on the 90 Day Fiance wrap up with the permanent host on that show, Puya. I guest on his show, so check me out there if you want to see get my feelings on other things as well. How
Cool.
about you, Marissa? Where can people find you and what you're up to?
For me, you can find me on Instagram and threads at It's Me Marissa G. And I'm writing about some other things on a blog, which is on a link. This is so clunky. Like, which is on a blog list. Like, you're gonna go here and then you're gonna click on something else to find out what I'm writing about. But other than that, I'm here. We're gonna be doing The Good Wife. There's some other stuff in the works around the internet. So stay tuned for some more announcements from me on that. But otherwise, just hanging out here.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, for the last time for a while, I'll say cut the baloney, call Tassioni.